Welcome to Custom Homebuilders Solutions, also known as CHS, a job costing, full accounting, and profit management software designed specifically for the professional home builder. Before we get into setting up things like your cost code centers for like framing, plumbing, roofing, and all that type of thing that you'll be using in CHS, we are first going to talk about something called cost types. So if you click this cost codes master setup, you're going to see one of the things that needs to be set up is cost types, and it's here before setting up your cost code centers, etc. Like I mentioned before, this video is going to be about setting up cost types. If you look at setup and help and you're following the CHS setup steps, you'll notice that we've already gone over permissions and company master, and the next thing is set up broad cost types like materials, labors, etc. And if you click that, you'll see that cost types are used to classify costs in broad categories like materials, labor, turnkey, office help, sales tax, etc. And almost all accounting transactions in CHS can be marked with a cost type. They're really handy for grouping and totaling costs by cost type on insurance audit reports, workman's comp reports, purchase order reports, job cost reports, and more. And the sales tax cost type can be used for searching and then producing sales tax reports for those home buyers that request the total of the sales taxes paid on their job costs. So we are setting up cost types before we set up those cost code centers, because we are going to attach cost types to various cost codes. Like if you have a cost code for $31.50 for frame labor or something like that, we're going to attach probably a cost type of labor to it. Or if it's frame materials, we would be attaching a cost type of materials. So that when you do data entry in accounting and you select a cost code, then the cost type attached to that cost code will just drop in for you. So you need to have these cost types set up before setting up your cost code so that you can select a cost type to attach to the cost code. Back on the main menu, like I said, you find it here with cost types to open it, or you could just start typing cost, and then you'll see cost types in your drop-down list if you didn't want to expand all those menus. Either way, you will get this window that is for setting up, editing, or deleting cost types. You'll see that we have a few of these dimmed out here because the labor, materials, other, and sales tax and turnkey are actually used by the program once in a while. And we don't want you to be changing those, so those are dimmed so that if you go to edit them, in this case, you cannot edit the word labor. But you could, since this is labor, and we'll get into this in a little while, but I'll show you this. You can say the workers' comp rate of $1.45 and then per amount of gross wages. And we'll see how that works in a little bit. You wouldn't do this for too many, only for cost types you'll be using for employees for your actual payroll. But we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But if I wanted to change this, something about this, I used the pencil edit icon, play like I changed it to $1.45, which it already was, but I'll submit it and you'll see it change right here. To add a new cost type, you use the button for add new cost type, and let's just do one for equipment because I didn't see that one there. And this isn't a type that will be affected on workers' comp, so we'll just submit the equipment. And after it's submitted, you'll see that it ends up in the record line. Now let's say later on we're trying to clean up this list and we want to delete some cost types that we don't use. You can't delete the standard CHS ones, but you use the red X icon to delete a cost type, and CHS will go out and check to see if that cost type has been used as a default for an employee, or if it's been used anywhere in your accounting database or anywhere else in CHS. And if it has, it's going to pop up and say it cannot be deleted because it's been used, and it'll tell you a little bit about where it's been used. But this one hasn't been used, so it says, is it okay to delete the cost type? So I'll click OK Delete. And then you'll see that it's been deleted. And you'll also be able to see that in an audit records for cost types that I just deleted that equipment. It says, first of all, it shows where I was today, just a minute ago, changing some things about the cost type labor. And then it's showing that user confirmed deletion of cost type equipment and who the user was. So you can see what date that happened, what time that happened, and who the user was that deleted that. So it's about that simple. You can get a little report of your cost types if you like, and you want to. In CHS, all reports will first open as something that's called a quick HTML web report, so that you can send it to Excel so it'll be opened quickly. The HTML web report is not formatted as nicely as if you export it to PDF. And please read our stuff about setting up your browser for how you want PDFs to open. I set up my browser to say preview in Firefox, and by doing that, it's giving me some options, and it will let me open it with my Adobe Acrobat Reader right here. So, but you may not get that option unless you set up your browser a certain way. So you can see how this is formatted a lot better, and then I'd use my print icon and just print those out if I want to just have a list of the cost types for some reason. These are very broad categories. These are not things like your roofing, framing, plumbing cost codes that we will be getting to in just a little bit. Now what I'd like to do is show you a few things about where and how cost types get used. First of all, under the main menu where you're setting up a cost codes master, like I said, and we're going to be getting to this won't be about setting up your various types of cost codes like roofing, framing. Let me get down to, you can see that we have framing materials going on here, and that they've been marked with the cost type of materials, and then framing labor extras has been marked with the cost type of labor. When you set up a new cost code and cost center, basically, the screen will look pretty much like this. This is already filled in, but notice how it's asking which cost type. By setting this up, every time I select 3150 when I'm entering a bill or creating a purchase order, the labor cost type will get attached right away to that record because of this cost code. So you can see how you're attaching them to cost codes here. So let's just go take a look at it if you're entering a bill. For that, back on our main menu, let's collapse all these, and let's go to add new payables bill. This is not about a video about adding bills, so we won't spend much time there. I just want you to see something when we go there. So let's select Big Buck Construction, just because. And I know that they're caught that if I look at the setup for Big Buck, and that's just some information that we don't need to talk about right now, you're going to see that when I was setting up this particular vendor with his address and his name and all of that stuff, there was a place here that asked for what's the most commonly used cost code for this vendor that will just drop in when you start a new payables bill. And I'll show you what happens now. You can see how that person was set up. So let's do a job related, play like we're doing a job cost bill here. We may get a few alerts because I use this as a demo and his insurance may have expired. Yes, I got some alerts, but we're not going to be concerned about that. But notice how that default cost code for Big Buck Construction dropped in here. And because attached to that cost code was a cost type of turnkey, when we set up the cost code, that dropped in. But notice if I decide for some reason he's doing framing labor, do that right here, suddenly that cost type changed to labor because that's attached to the cost code. So you could select a different cost type if you like, and various places throughout the program where you can select a cost type, you'll also see an icon like this, which means that you can add a new cost type or edit them or anything and get that same window for setting up cost types. Now I'd like to show that if for some reason, let's give this a job of, let's just use a general job that we just play with all the time, but let's use this one. And let's decide for some reason we're just paying him for some materials. The reason I'm doing that is maybe it's materials reframing, whatever. Notice that this changed to materials. I'm going to give it just some random invoice number, and I'll just type frame materials. And let's play it. We're just going to use a nice round number like 500. I don't know. I'm sure it'll be a lot more than that. But, so let's try 2,500. And then right here, I'm going to give it a sales tax rate. In our area, it's 8.25%. And when I do that, I'll look at that to see if it matches the invoice that I received from Big Buck for these materials. Normally, this will probably be some lumber company or something that you're doing it, but I'm just using this for an example. Now notice down here the total is 2,500. Sales tax is 206.25. CHS is actually going to post a separate record, a record for 2,500 and one for 206.25 that is marked with a cost type of sales tax, and that's how we can get those reports. So let's just submit it real quickly. I think I'll get warned that of course this is over and all kinds of stuff, but I'm going to end up deleting this in a minute. So let's just post it as unpaid to pay later so we can take a look at the records that got posted by CHS. So you'll see that 2 records got posted, and you're going to see a cost type materials for that 2,500 and a cost type of sales tax. And you're going to see that the description says sales tax 8.25 of 2,500. I just wanted to show you that. So there's 2 records existing now. So the next thing you can do is you could get some reports of various types of cost type things. So let's use the jobs dashboard, which you can open here, but I've already got open, and I selected that particular job. And let's go look at the actual job costs that have been posted to this job, which the one that I just posted should probably show up in there. But what I want to show you is that if you bring up this database of all the actual job costs for VistaView, we're running slower because we're doing a video, by the way. You'll notice that there's all these records and you can see a column for cost type. And down here you'll start seeing some of the materials and the sales tax. There's a real lumber company actually. So, and you'll see the ones I posted. If you go down here a little farther, there's that 2,500, which I'll be deleting after this video, and I don't need to show you how to do that. But what I do want to show you is that you can edit it if you suddenly decide this shouldn't be materials for whatever reason. But you can edit these, and you could change the cost type right here, and then you could save it. But we're not going to do that. If you just notice, while you're working on things, that needs to be different. But what I wanted to show you here is the search. And right over here, there's all kinds of things you can search by. But right over here, one of them is cost type. It says you can type partial, so maybe I'll just try. But I'll just go ahead and type sales tax. I probably could just type tax, and that would work. So we'll submit this search. Now you see that all the descriptions here are saying sales tax, and all the cost types are sales tax. And that means that this, if I produce a report of the results and I haven't narrowed it down, I can do various reports, job codes by this, all these things. But if I do one by cost, by job, and then by cost code, you'll see that you're getting all the records that actually have that description, sales tax, on this report. And if you look at your filters down here, you can see that you told it to filter it to sales tax. So this would be the total of sales tax paid on any job costs for this job. So that's a good report, and they're broken by vendors and by cost code, cost groups and codes, that kind of thing. So that's from the actual job cost report, and that's probably where you want to get a sales tax report. But you can also, I've already opened, this is not about doing accounting ledgers, so I've opened various things to be ready to do it. And I've selected an accounting ledger which that means you're going to get a ledger of everything by the GL account number you used, grouped and totaled by the GL account number. And this isn't just limited to job costs. Actually, I could, by just doing a range of cost codes that doesn't have the 01 in it, from the first one after 0 and then to that one. But if I open the accounting database for this one, this is the big accounting database, but I did narrow it down to records for that job in that search filter before. But I can also do a search here for the cost type. This one actually has a drop down. Sales tax, submit search, and they'll probably actually all be in the work in progress GL. You can see that because that's probably the only place you're doing sales tax for this job. So you get the same kind of thing, but what I wanted to show you is there's a little bit of a ledger by GL and then by cost type. So it's showing you that the cost type is sales tax right here, and that's what this is a report of. If you want to do it by GL and then vendor, and you know that you just search for cost types, that you're interested in how much is for each vendor, you can do that here. You get the same totals here. You can do by the GL and then by cost code if you're wanting to break it into what those various cost codes are. So you're getting all kinds of ways, and your filter down there will show that you only searched for ones that had the cost type of sales tax. If I wanted to do one for just how much was labor, I could, just because I want to. You know, I need to clear this one out and just do labor. It'll let you do it multiples there is what that's about. The comma, I could have looked for labor and sales tax. So now you could do the same thing, get reports of just how much was for labor if that's necessary for you, for somebody that's asking for it. It actually comes more into play about separating labor and materials. If you're doing the insurance general liability audit and that's happening, this is a policy period I put here, and I'm getting ready for the general liability audit. And so I'm going to click this for general liability audit and see all things that were paid to vendors that were marked, like subcontractors, that were marked that general liability insurance is required and that were actually paid during that period. So you're seeing a list of all the records of everybody paid during that period, et cetera, and you're seeing the cost types going on over here. By the way, turnkey is used by builders to mean that they have been billed for both labor and materials, and they don't know how much is for each. It is always a good idea for these insurance liability audits that you kind of start insisting that somebody that's charging you for both separate those out on your bill, so you can post 2 lines and then select turnkey on one line and labor on the other line when you're posting your accounts payable, because it's much better to have those separated yourself before that auditor comes in, and on turnkey they may just apply some percent to it if they're charging you for that because some subcontractor's insurance was expired, etc. But what I wanted to show you here is, first of all, you can edit this right here if you decide you want to change this from you can edit it right here if you want to change, say you decide this is for materials or something else, in the cost type, you can edit it, and you'll see that there's a place right here to edit that cost type on that record if you just decide before your audit, really that should have been some other cost type. The neat thing about it, in the reports that I'll show you, we're not really talking about general liability audits, except that I want to show you how this report will take and sum up, will give information like the cost of framing, so much was for labor, and something for turnkey. I don't know, who knows, this is demo stuff, labor, turnkey, that we've been doing, but it's splitting them, totaling and splitting what was paid to this particular vendor, how much for labor, how much for materials, how much it's, and if it's more than one, if it finds more than one, it'll group and total them. These numbers may not make any sense because this is completely a demo, not really a real home builders thing. But I just wanted to show you that cost types are being used there. Then we have one more place, which is the payroll. If you're posting payroll in CHS, you first of all can set up an employee. And when you set up an employee, you can, I'll show you a setup window. This is George Brown employee. And it's going to ask you over here, when you're setting up the employee, what the workers' comp type is for this employee. This happens to be project manager, somebody who does labor out in the field or something like that. So we selected labor, but it's the same. It's from the list of cost types. So there's those cost types, and you can select a cost type. I'll just close this because I didn't save it. April Smith, I'll tell you, is set up as office help. So if we close this, whoops, I didn't mean to, there we go. Back on the payroll menu, there's a place down here. First of all, if I edit cost type and workers' comp rate, there's that window again. And I could change something about this if I'm dealing with workers' comp reports. Then there's a button for showing, I just asked for a big wide range of dates because we don't have very many payroll entries in here, so I wanted to show, all of those. Probably be for a year or some period that you're doing for workers' comp. But you'll see how this first one is grouped by cost type. So there's labor, and then there's office help, and these are based on their gross pay. Their regular pay records will be shown here, and whatever workers' comp rate you set for that cost type of labor, which this is a list of labor, will be here. And then it will do a calculation to show how much will be for workers' comp, because it's $1.45 per 100 of labor, and the total was $1,200. So however that math got taken care of shows how much workers' comp amount there would be based on how you set that up. And this was 32 cents per $100 of labor. And all of that part right there was set up when you set up cost types. So you can see how this report is grouped by the cost type, then the employee, and then the other report is grouped by employee and then by cost type. So if you'd paid George Brown for some office help, you'd see labor and then office help and then the total for George Brown. You'd see those grouped by that, but we haven't done any like that. So this is the same type of concept. It's just that it's grouping first by employee, then by cost type, and the other one was the other way around. I think that's all that I needed to say about, I did want to show you one more thing. Back on the jobs dashboard, if we add a new purchase order for this job that we selected, I'll click that. So it's supplied the job because I was on the jobs dashboard, but let's select that. Let's select, I thought there was a cost of framing. If you look at the cost of framing and how it was set up, you'll see that it was set up with a default cost code of $31.50. But I could change that right now. It's just dropping in because that's what a cost of framing is set up. And because the cost type of labor is attached to $31.50, the cost type of labor has also dropped in for this purchase order. We can do some reports or some looking at purchase order records based on what kind of cost type it is. It's just pretty much an information thing when you get to POs. Notice that if I change this to framing package cost code, materials actually dropped in because I have that attached to that cost code. So hopefully you get a good concept. It's like they're broad categories, but we need to set those up before we set up the cost codes, and you can see why. Because when you set up your cost codes, it's going to ask you which cost type is attached to that. So thank you for watching that. If you have any questions about anything, please feel free to contact us.